Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to MTG Arena. Today is Monday, November 18th, and it seems like they've decided to throw out a updated ban list on MTG Arena and apply that updated ban list right now. Which is something you can really only do with a living game, something you really can't do as easily with the paper Magic game. And we can notice here that the number one card that I've even been hearing people complain about, and I'm brand new to getting back into playing Magic, is Oko Thief of Crowns, which I assume he was the Oko that everybody was playing. 70% of all decks apparently were playing this one Planeswalker card. Other cards that are banned are Field of Dead. Field of Dead, I believe, was already banned for something else. And then Once Upon a Time and Veil of Summer, I haven't heard anybody mention, but I imagine these are just kind of all overpowered cards. Notice that these two are from the Core 2020 expansion, so Wizards of the Coast Research and Development Team, not very smart, clearly. This is from the latest expansion, Throne of Eldrin, and so that at least in the last 3 expansions, they've been screwing up. This, I believe, is War of the Spark, which would have been the expansion before Core 2020. So you have here, over the course of the last year, at least 4 cards being way overpowered and not balanced right. Now, what Hearthstone may have done here was change what the cards did instead of banning the cards, which feels a little bit nicer, but it's effectively the same same thing. It's kind of even worse to change the cards, because theoretically you could still play this in some kind of friendly game, maybe, if such a thing exists in MTG Arena. I don't think something does exist right now, but it probably eventually will. It says down here, cards on the standard ban list can still be played in historic matches and direct challenges. So you still do have those 2 ways in which you can play these cards, but as far as anything that's a standard game, a standard regular player, standard ranked, the gameplay styles that they really want you to be playing, these are just completely banned. And there's no big evolution here. And we're getting a mythic rare wild card. I don't know if that's because I had one of those cards that was banned. I probably had Oko, if I was to guess, but because I imagine everybody had Oko. We're starting a little late today because late in the evening last night I decided to have my computer live boot into a special version of Linux to scan for viruses, and it found 6 things it considered viruses and got rid of them, and they probably weren't that big, but I was noticing there was something that was launching that I didn't like. So it took a little bit longer than it should have for that. Usually I have a pack to open or something, but today we kind of don't start with any of that. Alright, well, we re-rolled this, and so play 40 lands, play blue or red, play black or red. So we should play red, but we also want to do this festival, or I need to make the decision that it's not worth 2,500 gold to do the festivals. I think it probably isn't worth it to do the festivals for what you're paying for. You're effectively spending 500 gold to get a skin, whereas if we went to the store, I think there are not these skins that are worth 2,000 each, because they're like commander cards. Let's see. Maybe 500 gold is the best deal to get skins, actually. I thought for a while there we were getting like 300 gold to get skins. Yeah, you'd be paying more for these skins. These cosmetics. But you probably are still wasting your money in comparison. It'd be better just to buy 2.5 packs. Although, I don't know how this all breaks down. When all is said and done, then you have all these cards. It feels like as soon as the entire next expansion comes out and the latest expansion that you own all becomes banned, feels like you would lose almost all the value of those cards. Well, as a YouTuber though, it still makes sense to do this. This is gonna keep things spicy and interesting. So we need to edit this deck. And what we're looking for, let's learn to use this layout, is we are looking for a considerable amount of land increase. We have 11 mountains, well 7 mountains, 11 4 bloodfell caves, which makes 11, and then 6 swamps. Which that leaves us at 17 when we should really be closer to 26. And this has been the problem. So we can't have any more bloodfell caves. So we need to go, let's see. Our mana curve is mostly in the middle. Let's see when we click this. A lot of non-creature spells, which makes sense for a black-red deck. So 13, 17, I want this to be at least 20, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and then, am I wrong about 26? So 1, 2. So that should put us now at 23, 27. We're at like 27. There we go. 27 mana. So now we have to get rid of 9 cards. So let's look at our strategy. Vicious Rumor can go. Deals 1 damage to other players or planeswalker it's attacking. Deals 1 damage to a creature and 1 damage to a permanent controller. See, a lot of these cards probably could be improved a lot better. +3 per turn. Skew the critic does 3 damage to any characters. This is a Spectre card. 3 damage. Or 4 damage instead. This is all it's built around, so anything that's not directly around the concept of doing non-combat damage, I think should just leave. See, this one's probably not that useful. We have 4 things we need to get rid of. Baked into the pie doesn't really synergize with that. 6 damage at a very high cost. And then here you have a 7 mana card that's probably not worth playing. Yeah, I think that's where a lot of this boils down to. Right, and I'm just gonna get rid of one land. Yeah, in a weird way, I guess I could have gotten rid of a couple of lands because of the heroic banners. Let's see. Yeah, a lot of these cards probably could do better. But let's just try that. Dome Destruction version 1.0 play. So I finally finished Fear, and it's gonna be a hard argument to even bother to play Fear 2. I've already decided I'm gonna skip the 2 standalone DLC games, which was Project Origin and Extraction Point. Like I don't really see a reason to go any further with that. Leyline of the Void. It's probably a great card to have. I just don't have it. This is probably yeah, I think I've seen that like pretty much every Leyline card ever made was problematic and should be banned. Alright. What did that do? Whenever you cast your first spin for a spell in each turn, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card with converted mana less than you may cast that card without paying. Then put the exiled card into that weren't cast on the bottom of the library in a random order. Let's see. Jeez, if I was making something very specific to this, I probably have a card that I probably have a card that would synergize with this kind of well. Like, I think there is a card out there like that. Alright. Yeah, Fear's writing is a mess. It really is. As best as I understand it, the story in Fear, and this is spoilers for a game you shouldn't bother to play, in Fear 1, is that you have this, like, 8-year-old or 13-year-old maybe girl that is psychic that they put in a coma and make pregnant and have her have this psychic baby, and then she's like this non-corporeal ghost creature that sometimes shows up as a creepy 8-year-old girl, but or most of the time shows up like that, but really there's no reason. But also she shows up as a creepy naked like 15-year-old girl, and like and she's spooky but not really a threat to you throughout the most of the game, but in a couple of sections she actually is a threat to you, and she'll just kill you on contact as soon as she touches you. At one point at the very end you do have to shoot her, but at the rest of the time you're not really shooting at her. It constantly, in these hallucination cutscenes that we were Let's see. Oh yeah, just did some major damage there. Not even really paying attention enough. It constantly would take all of your guns away from you, and you only had like 3 gun slots anyways, and give you a handgun just to make sure you had a handgun with bullets, but then it didn't give back any of your guns, so you at the end of the game would reset a couple of times where you would have to go and find new guns, but then you were constantly running out of bullets and having to swap around guns anyways, because it was just such a mess of just bad gameplay decisions by modern standards. Am I gonna block? No, I don't think so. I don't think there's a reason to block. Do I not have enough mana? I guess I don't. I don't have 2 black. Surprise, surprise, the character that you're playing in Inferior, who never talks, turns out that there's a reason he never talks, is because he's like the second child of Alma, which doesn't really mean too much, really. It just kind of explains why you have this time slowdown ability the whole time. Let's see. You're told throughout the entirety of the game that you're supposed to kill Fexel, and then when you finally do catch up with Fexel at the end of the game, he's just sitting there waiting for you to shoot him, effectively. Like, it's so pathetic and dumb. So I just like hit him, but even knocking people over is a fatal action in this game. So I just knocked him over and he died, and there was no fight. There really is no fight with Alma. At a certain point, Alma starts throwing these ghost-like creatures that straight up look like asset flip horror ghosts you would see these days. It's almost as if what they had done when they made Fear 1 is they had bought the Unity assets that were way more expensive, I guess, 15 years ago, and more people had more limited access to make what would be the equivalent of an asset flip first-person shooter, military shooter, horror game. And that was good enough at the time to make Fear a mediocre, I would really call it just like a C game, maybe even a D game. It's not great by any means, and like lack of controller design or support is a problem. There's 2 points in the game where you have to run, and or at least 1 point in the game where you have to run, and there's just no focus on that. So I was gonna win regardless with this ability. But the story is basically nothing, and you do nothing to really move the story forward for the vast majority of the game. Like, of the 10 hours, at least 8.5 of the hours are spent either in the intro warehouse facility, which really doesn't mean anything or do anything, and there's like an hour and a half in that, and then there's easily 7+ hours in the Armacam offices, just seeing the same offices over and over again with 2 styles of enemies. The vast majority of the time you're fighting the replicant army, Clearly this was just a multiplayer game that was throwing a bunch of multiplayer levels at you, and they tried to wrap a single player story around it. But the story is written so badly. It really is. And it's hard, even if you were just trying to do something like the Grudge or Ring, and have a there's nothing in my deck. Like, even if you were trying to have something like that and have a creepy black-haired girl, it falls apart because Alma, as the creepy black-haired 9-year-old, which is what they're trying to copy, gets transformed into this weird like 15-year-old, and the ages are way off, frankly, than an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, and I'm not really picking these numbers out of the air as much as you would think, since I just keep throwing different numbers out. But like they clearly, when they were writing the story, were picking numbers out of the air too. I don't want to cast that yet. Instead, I'll do this. Yep. I don't want to attack yet. So, yeah, their whole timeline makes no sense at all. And if they try to wrap around in the sequel game to explain it, like there's the innocent soul ghost of the 8-year-old, and then there's the evil soul ghost of the 15-year-old. It really doesn't make any sense at all. It's ridiculous. And why you would have a psychic 8-year-old put in a coma and be pregnant, pregnant twice,
Surely you see the humor here.
No sense. And it also means that she died like a long time ago, before the game even started. So the whole thing falls apart. It really makes no sense at all. It's ridiculous. Ridiculously bad story writing. What they were trying to tease, I imagine, was that you kept seeing these cutscenes of a woman giving birth or being forced to give birth, and that Alma was the girl, the psychic girl. The idea that Alma would have been the little sister of Fextel, and then he would have some pure motivation for all the massacre that he's causing.
It's not poisoned. Trust me.
That would have worked a lot better. If Alma was in some way alive but in a coma and you actually rescued her at the end of the game, that would have felt like you had done something somewhat useful instead of it just turning into a horror thing. I really don't have a problem with the idea of ending a horror game where all the scariness is occurring because some psychic girl is having nightmares or something like that. That kind of works for me just fine. Right. 3 damage for the Spectre cost. go ahead and kill this. And let's go ahead and kill this too. Yeah. So yeah, it really fails to make any good sense at all that you would want to play Fear. And I think I probably will just throw Fear 2, Fear 3, Fear the 2 DLCs. So that's like 4 games that I'm probably just going to throw into my category of probably never going to play. And this is not a big problem when you have over 1,000 games on Steam, but it sucks. Like, I clearly did pay money for these games. I should give them the college try, but on the other hand, I played all of the first game.
Fairness? What a bizarre expectation.
I don't think I would ever decide to yeah, I just don't think I'd ever decide to want to go back and play Fear 2, at least in the next year. Maybe there's something to that. I guess we can do this also.
Why do you cross me?
Just go and sacrifice the food too. How much damage is this gonna do?
I grace you with my lack of presence.
Yeah. There really needed to be a lot more times when Alma was either fighting you directly instead of you shooting just military guys throughout the entire game, or helping you, or just sowing the seeds of chaos. I think in a modern day, 15 years later, or nearly 15 years later, you sign her up as this psychotic chaos, like loving demon child, just this crazy person that would sometimes mess with the enemies and sometimes mess with you. The thing that seems kind of obvious is that there probably was some groundbreaking AI put into the enemies in Fear. They can recognize when their companions have been shot. They can recognize when you have a flashlight on. They can probably hear when you're making noise if you're running around. They can see you with pretty decent things like that are pretty standard these days, but they would have been kind of groundbreaking then. So if Alma had just acted a lot more like the Left 4 Dead director program that would decide whether the game is going too fast or too slow and say, hey, this is going too fast, let's slow it down by, say, making all the enemies go blind, and then you just hear them go, oh, I can't barely see, or I can't see. That would be useful. If you make them go deaf, then you hear them go, it's so quiet, and lines of dialogue like that, then that would make them go deaf. And then you'd have Alma, if the game is going too fast and they feel like, and she felt like there was a little bit more challenge needed, she could have reduced your field of vision, made it a little bit dimmer, That's a little risky, but it would be cool. What in the world was that? What in the world just got played? The golden egg. I think I've probably lost, if I was to guess. Also, she could, since at the end of the game she's throwing these floating ghost creatures that have like basically no animation on them at you, and they're just flying to you, towards you, and they kind of touch you and do a massive amount of damage and then disappear. You could have had more of that. You could have had her appear, and she creates fire, it seems, a lot of the times when she appeared, so she could have certainly stayed within that canon of what was being established and create more fire. She touches certain enemies, and whenever she touches somebody, they just dissolve into a pool of blood and a skeleton. She could pop up at any point in the game and do that. Although that wouldn't be particularly fair to the main players. If you turned around and she's standing right there and she just touches you and turns you into a skeleton. But you could certainly have a fake out moment when that happens. Anything to keep her more involved in the actual gameplay loop would have been way better than what happened, because you forget she exists, basically. The game forgets she exists, basically, for the entirety of it. I believe in the last stream I mentioned that the little girl Alma got in the elevator with Alice Wade, and then Alice Wade kind of just forgot everything that was happening there. And so I thought maybe Alma is inside of Alice Wade. No, not really. That went nowhere. That was just bad writing again. Alma is Alma Wade, so in theory I believe if she was still alive and aging, she would have been the older sister of Alice. Or maybe Alice is a clone of Alma, but why then wouldn't she be psychic? They don't do anything with Alice Wade. Fextel, who would have also been like the nephew of Alice, just murders Alice Wade for no reason. And it's kind of nothing. Like every character just gets murdered, not by you, and then you cause a nuclear explosion just for a cliched ending in which you potentially murder a bunch of other people, but I don't think you really do that. I think the area was already evacuated, so you've just blown up in the facility that her ghost powers were somewhat being contained in, but not really. Part of this, I think, is in the credits that it seems like the story was written by like a Chinese or Japanese person, and there was this like big ball of water that apparently Alma's corpse was being contained in. Ghosts can't cross water is a Japanese myth, so that kind of makes sense. So it seems like maybe they hired a Japanese person to write the story, and then they failed to translate that to an actual video game, and they fit a lot probably got lost in translation in general, or it more than likely this fears an example of two games being merged together, two or three failed projects from different teams, I suspect, being merged together into something that they could just sell. It certainly has been a long time. We may have to exit out here. Yep, we've got the broken thing, so it's time to relaunch Magic. Wish they would fix this problem. It's been a long time since I've played a game that is just should be good but is not good. Usually if I'm playing something that's bad, it's either known to be pretty bad or or it's obvious that it would be bad. And then in a weird way, since this is such an old game, it probably wasn't considered bad in its heyday. Like, if I were to go look up the Metacritic reviews, here, let's see if we can do this. Metacritic. Here. So over here, his Metacritic scores here. Fear was given an 88. It's given a user score of 8.3. It was considered really, really good when it came out. So the question, I guess, comes down to, is it because it's just so old, or is it because I'm just off my game and my opinions are completely different from other people? I would imagine it probably is just because it's so old. Let's see. There's this trailer gonna load. I hear more people more and more concerned about not being able to succeed on YouTube anymore due to the COPPA regulations. Personally, I think I'm just gonna slide between it, but the shock here would be if the FTC could really enforce some kind of accusation against my video amongst the billions of other videos on YouTube, whichever videos they would claim were directed towards kids, and they were going to try and fine me. Like, they're never going to get a dime of that. They're never going to get a dime of that from almost every single YouTuber out there. We don't make that much money. We don't have that much money. So it would be ridiculous and a waste of the FTC's time. I still am under the opinion that a lot of this is just hysteria. YouTubers like to be hysterical, you know, and I think that's really what this is really just boiling down to, is they're being hysterical and trying to get views. And in actuality, it's in no way ever going to be enforced, and it's not going to be a big issue. This let's see. There we go. Here we have like a review here we can talk about it. According to these user reviews, Fear seems to be a love or hate experience. People junk this game for repetitive levels, bad graphics, and lack of enemy diversity. I think that's all accurate. I just don't see any of that except for maybe the bad level complaint is valid. Although who cares about how the levels look when the gameplay is so solid? Yeah, and this was 2011, 8 years ago. The gameplay was probably super solid back then. It's not solid now, though. It's like standards have just increased. The good news is we've gotten better in the video game world for at least a little bit. We are no longer in situations where we're constantly we're no longer constantly just accepting good enough And things have just gotten better, and games have gotten better. And compared to Dead Space, which Dead Space 1 is a pretty old game. That's about as far back as I think you should go for a horror first-person shooter game. And if you just can't get your feel from Dead Space 1, 2, and 3, I don't know if there's a lot of other options, because so many of these first-person shooters went into the military action genre, and so many of the horror games went into the amnesia style gameplay, where if you ever have a gun, it's extremely limited. I have the thought to play that game Pacify on Steam. It's probably too expensive and not worth my time, just to compare what it's doing versus what Fear does, because Pacify is a creepy black-haired ghost girl still playing on that Ring Japanese trend, which by today's standards is pretty old. Let's see. This needs to be played first. And then go ahead and do this. And then I really would have liked to kill this too. But whatever. We'll just no attack. No attack it. Yeah. So horror games have kind of become their own thing. I guess the elephant in the room that I keep avoiding mentioning is, hey, why not play Resident Evil 7? Like, in a lot of ways, like Resident Evil 7 definitely got back into more of the horror element of first-person shooting. Resident Evil 7 has a lot of puzzles. There's no puzzles in Fear. There's a lot of enemy diversity. There's boss fights. There's really no boss fights in Fear. Why not play the remastered Resident Evil 2? Same situation. The only difference is in Resident Evil games you're fighting zombie monster creatures for the most part, and there isn't any creepy Japanese girl. But if you want to play a creepy Japanese girl game, then there probably are several Japanese games like that aren't first-person shooters. Am I supposed to be doing something? No, it's just him taking forever. So, yeah, I would say play Resident Evil 7, play Resident Evil 2, and maybe play Pacify, or just go watch the movie The Ring, and if you want the Japanese horror thing. If you want to, there's probably a small collection of live action or animated Japanese horrors, manga and anime out there that are worth watching and are actually scary. Alright, so play this. Play this. And attack that, I guess. And then I guess you could block with this if you wanted to. But otherwise I'm going to attack. So you could use this and this, block this, and kill that. That's pretty much all you could do. So yeah, 15 years later, not impressed. Not really satisfied with Fear. I think probably this is just that inverted valley, like where you have old arcade games from the 70s and 80s, and NES games and Super NES games, and then as you start approaching Nintendo 64 games and GameCube games, there's lesser and lesser of those games that are worth going back and playing again, because more and more shovelware comes around, and then you just kind of hit the rock bottom when you're at the Wii point. And Nintendo references are great here for me. Once you're at the Wii and the Wii U point where it's just shovelware, there's very few Wii and Wii U games that are worth playing that frankly aren't just remakes of older games. And then eventually you start getting up to like Switch and modern times. And I think for PC games in particular, there was just a ton of shovelware too. But the 3D graphics, the low polygon count, all of that seems to kind of synergize to make pretty unplayable games. Where if you go back and play Doom 1, you know it's not trying to do modern graphics, it's not hyper realistic 3D graphics, so but it's still kind of playable if it doesn't make you motion sick like it does to me. But if you try to go back and play Doom 3, the one Doom game I totally skipped when playing games, there's kind of no way that's gonna work for people. Alright. Red is the right one to play. Okay. I'm just gonna attack with both and see if he's willing to get rid of his legendary creature. Actually, he is. Do I want to do 1 damage to that guy? Actually, yeah, let's just do that. So yeah, I probably have talked about more about fear than it really deserved at this point. So let's just start going over the news. It's becoming my slogan to say there isn't a ton of news, but there really isn't. But potentially some big news, although it really will just boil down to what you think is big news. So Gamasutra has an article here. Valve is making a new VR Half-Life game. We knew they were making, I think they said 3 VR games, and I think they said at least one of them was going to be in the Half-Life universe. So yeah, no surprise there. This game, Half-Life Alyx, is implying focus on Half-Life 2 supporting character Alice Vance. Yeah, they've actually unveiled it so that they've actually committed to it. This isn't just a rumor. This isn't Half-Life 3 confirmed or anything like that. It's a VR game that I think will mean kind of nothing. Right. 5 damage to a creature, and then pay the adamant, and then play that, and then be red. And then just no attack there. Like, this game will probably be not a lot of much. Like, it would be ridiculous to have any faith in Valve to actually make a game. But there are some factors that they don't control that might be actually pushing them to make games again. Of course, at this point, it is basically a whole new team also. So whoever actually made Half-Life 1, whoever actually made Half-Life 2, those people have either changed themselves or they have left the company. So they probably wouldn't make anything that feels like an old Half-Life game, for better or worse. Like, if they just made a game that was Half-Life 1 again, and at the same level of quality, it wouldn't be good enough. This game, even this VR game, which is just going to be a side story and probably won't be that good, it's still going to have to be way better than an average VR game. But yeah, with loot box controversies and skin trading and selling and things like that potentially not being as viable anymore for Valve, that they may literally have been scared into actually starting development of some new games. Although, in all fairness, they would have also had been working on this for a while. Let's see. Yep, just stick with no attacks, and we'll just do this. None of these have reach. Well, this guy has reach, darn it. So I'll have to either get rid of this guy or hope he attacks so he can't block. I don't know, maybe in the next 4 to 6 years, Valve will be back into making games. The Epic Store is another thing that certainly could have scared them into saying, hey, we've got to do something to keep people coming to our platform and staying on our platform. We've got to have some kind of exclusive, and we don't want to do exclusivity deals. So instead, they're gonna make their own products again. It really seems like if you were a new and upcoming programmer, working for Valve is not a good place to get a job. I mean, if you've got to get a job, you've got to get a job, certainly, but you're not going to pad out your resume with much.
Won't lie, I'm
working at Valve. On the other hand, if you're a lazy employee and you just want to sit around and kind of do nothing, or you don't mind working on customer support things and Steam store things, if you're a web designer, a storefront web designer, it'd probably be a great job at Valve. Or yeah, if you just don't care about leaving any legacy. But I think even if you were a new programmer and you thought to yourself, if you were so jaded at the beginning that you was thinking to yourself that, oh, I don't care about my legacy, I don't care if I actually program a game, I think you would hurt yourself immensely in the long run and regret that later on. As you're 30 years into a potential career and approaching retirement, the idea of not leaving the legacy becomes a lot more scary and a lot more of a thing you don't want to have happen. I probably lost here, so should I keep playing or should I just auto pass everything? There, I think, maybe has been announcements for one of the other VR games already. So there's, I think, still one VR game they haven't announced. But what's weird here is unless they're going to release this VR game on Black Friday, which would be an interesting twist. I don't know why you would announce it on basically a week before. But yeah, you could certainly have ridden that announcement for a month or two. But yeah, if you released it on Black Friday bundled with a VR headset and your you can only buy the game if you buy the VR headset. They could probably scam a bunch of people out of a lot of money that way. And then at some point after Christmas, after New Year, they release the game separately. And then that could be part, or they could, yeah, just that could be a way of promoting what might be a lackluster Black Friday sale or Christmas sale. Yeah. I've got nothing here. Three damage to any target. Alright, and this one will do 2 damage to a creature and a planeswalker. Wow, I actually did win. Let's see, how long have we been going? About exactly an hour. Interesting. I desperately need to break up these recordings into hour-long things. Because I've not been having 3 episodes, and I need to build up my bulk of that. So this will be we'll wrap up and make the next recording. They apparently decided I needed a bunch of blues, because that's all I got. Well, this new deck that I'm playing seems better. Seems like we're not running out of mana, and it doesn't seem like we are at a point where we have so much extra mana that that's a problem. You kind of always need land, and you kind of always need mana in a weird way, so you really do have to take nearly half of your deck of 60 cards, and 26 of them are supposed to be land cards. That seems so insane for somebody who's been playing Hearthstone and not having to deal with any of that. Although it really also goes to point out that when you're playing Hearthstone, you basically are playing what would be the equivalent of an 120 deck game of Magic, because half of the cards would be land, and you don't have to deal with that in Hearthstone. Anyways, we've gotten 18 out of 40 lands played. We've gotten 23 out of 30 blue or red spells played, and we're getting victories slowly, which is giving us XP and working our way up to level 59, which it's 1,000 XP each time, and it doesn't get any more expensive, I don't think, or at least it doesn't seem like it is. Maybe it's gonna do that slowly. We have 33 hours to finish this. Anyways, that's gonna be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.